Hey everybody, I'm back here at it. I promised video number 2 on the header stuff. I want to talk about this a little bit more. Sorry about the last one. In the end, I sort of got interrupted by somebody who was coming to do some gutter work on my building, which is fine. You know, needed to be done, and honestly, I'm getting too old to crawl up that high on a ladder. So guys did a fantastic job. Appreciate that. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the header stuff. I've shown you the fixture I used to cut on my bandsaw. There's other ways to do it out there, measure the angles and stuff like that, and I can talk a little bit about that, but I'll walk over to the toolbox and get the tool I use to measure. If I need to measure angles, typically don't. Like I say, I've done a lot of this stuff, so just know how it needs to go together, what it takes. So here goes nothing. I'm gonna walk over here quick in this mess. Show you this dealio. It's like a General Tools digital angle finder. Okay, if you're measuring angles, this is the ticket here. It's got a little button here. Press that and turns on the digital feature. Loosen up the knob. Turn that and it tells you, well, that way, and what angle we're at. So like if you were measuring this tube here from the mean, if you wanted to measure this angle, you'd sort of put it on that angle there, try to find the center, something sort of like that there, and you sort of you almost need 2 of these if you're doing it, but you do that and then you take that angle there, and like I say, you got to measure from where the middle of that bend is to get what you want. Okay, and you're sort of checking to see if it's going to look the same on both sides. You can put a magic mark on there and check it, but that's going to tell you in relationship where you want to go. And now I'm looking at that tube and I'm sort of talking to you from the middle of all this. You need to know your primary length. You need to sort of know where your step's going to be, and of course you got to remember too that you're working with a certain radius in this tube. So I mean, they make tighter radiuses and looser radius, but still you still have to work within a certain area to get this stuff to work. As you'll notice on this one here, I've got this step, the step length is a little longer than this one, because of the fact of where I needed the tube to lay onto here. I could have put another little piece of 2-inch tubing on this to shorten up that primary, but then it's another weld, and I'm trying to, the less welds you got in this tubing, the better off you are. So, you know, less opportunity for it to crack or break. And as I said before, use filler wire. When I do these, I sand them flat, make my fit real good, and then I chamfer the pieces back a little bit so the filler lays all the way in and I get great fusion. I should say fusion penetration. A lot of guys are fusion welding these headers, and when you fuse this piece to this piece, the material to fill the welding has to come from somewhere. So it comes from the tube. So what you do is you got like a 16 gauge tube here and a 16 gauge tube here, but it's 20 gauge in the weld, and it's gonna break there. I've seen it so many times where I've had to take other people's headers and clean them and weld them with filler wire. So anyways, I know what I want my primary tube length to be, or close to it. So what I'll do is I'll start with a piece that I know, like this piece here, will get me pointing pretty close to the right direction, you know, of where I need to be. You know, I could have run this tube out and come this way, But what I'm really trying to do here is I'm trying to make it easy to change plugs, okay? Key there. You want to be able to get the plugs in and out of the motor. I mean, on a chassis car, it's a lot harder. This thing here is not really, sort of a semi-fender well header, just sort of goes over the frame rail. But like I say, I get this tube about where I want it, and it was really probably about this long, okay? Then I can figure out where this tube goes, where I want this, and I take another piece like this and I just sort of eyeball where this is all going to go together, and then I start sneaking up on the cuts, okay? Now this piece here, when I'm doing this, I'm trying to get these to come straight out of the head, and I try to have at least 3/4 of an inch to an inch of straight tubing out of this hole right here. I try to get 3/4 to an inch of straight tubing there, and then I'll work on fitting this piece in. So I cut this one long, this one was long, this one was pretty close, and then I just started cutting it, sneaking up it a little bit at a time to where I get it all rotated together where I wanted it, holding it with my hands and making sure that my fits were right. Then what I do is I take a magic marker, holding it all together, and I'll make a marker line right there, and I'll tack this piece together. I'll put like 3 or 4 little tacks on it, and then bring it back over here and make sure that this fits still good. If not, I'll readjust things, get them where I need to be. Then when that's done, I typically take masking tape and I'll tape this joint here where I can get like 1 tack on it right there, maybe where it's easy to tack. Pull the masking tape off, get a couple more tacks, then I pull it apart and weld this tube together completely. If you try to build these headers with a slip fit collector like I've got on here, and you just try to tack them all together and then pull them apart and weld them up, that collector won't go back on there. You'll fight it. So what I do is I build my first tube, pull it out, weld it all together, tack it up on the flange really good in 3 or 4 spots, move to the second tube, do the same thing, fit it, tack it into the flange really good, and move to the next one. Then when all those are done, I can slip the collector on for the 4th tube, get some tacks on that. Then I know that collector will come on and off real easy. Okay, so I've got it that far. I've back gas purged all the tubes. I've got them all welded up. They're all tacked to the flange. Collector fits on. The tubes go down in the collector. And I mark them too. Usually like this collector, if I can get that down where you can see, this primary tube slips into this collector 1 7/8 inches. So what I'll do is I'll put an 1 7/8 inch mark on there. Make sure they all fit down in there as close as I can get them when I'm tacking it together. So then, as you'll notice, I only weld a little bit on that slip fit collector. So if I ever have to take this off, I can just trim that little weld. If you try to weld it all the way around, you never get that thing apart. Because a lot of these, when I build them, I'll take these flanges and I'll cut them out here and use the separate flanges when I'm building my headers. So if somebody wants to change primary length or something like that, it's not that hard to do. And that still can be done with this one. So once that's done, I'll pull that off and clamp it to my table, like over on my table on the edge here. I'll either clamp it or bolt it. I've got holes drilled in that table too to bolt this down. And I'll weld the tube to the inside of the flange because I've got those fit in there so they're flush with the inside of the flange. And I'll TIG weld that first. That's the only part that I can't back gas purge. So what I'll do there is when I'm welding, I'll turn my gas flow up higher, like another 10 cubic feet an hour, to just make sure that stays nice and clean. Okay, I'll weld those up and I'll let it cool down completely. Then what I'll do is I'll flip it over onto the table, bolt it down to the table. Then I've got a big plug I think you can see it hanging on my welder over there. See that big red plug hanging there? That goes into the collector, and then I'll back gas purge it again, and I will weld these welds here. And as you'll notice, I didn't get down inside of there. There's no need to get carried away. This is more like it's sealed up on the inside, so this is more to add strength to the header tube. So I weld them around there, let them cool off, then I'll make my weld on my collector and do this one. And I did it in 3 spots. NHRA requires that they either be collectored, or the collectors be welded on or tethered on. You know, you use collector tethers, but this group, they don't like to see that stuff, so I just weld them on like that. And it needs to be more than a tack weld. You know, it needs to be 3/4 of an inch long on 2 or 3 tubes, so just keeps it from falling apart. I'm hoping that some of this helps you guys. Like I say, most of these angles and stuff, I'll get rough measurements and then I'll just fit them, eyeball them and fit them. So, phone's ringing. Let me turn this off quick. So, hang on a second, fellers. It's probably somebody wanting to know how I'm going to vote. And I'm going to vote to save our country. I don't typically try not to put politics in this, but I'm a pretty politically minded feller, and right now I believe we're voting good versus evil. The stuff I see amazes me that they want to do to our country and our religion, you know. Freedom to speak is a key. I'm getting to do this, talk to you guys because our Constitution allows it. But honestly, the Democratic Party wants to take that away from us. They want to tell us what we can say, which is really sad. You know, our economy is killing us. Why does a $5 footlong cost $13 right now? Tell me people want to vote for that. So enough of that rant. But anywho, that's where I'm at with the headers. You can see how I do them. I know these will run well. And I know that because I've built headers like this before, and we've taken them to the dyno shops. Not the one I use, but other shops in the past. And these guys say, oh, my header's going to make more power, and they bolt their header on and it don't make no more power. You know, I know that for a fact. I've seen it happen. A good video to watch if you don't believe me is Freiberger did an Engine Masters video on headers. They put headers on a small block Chevy. They mashed them up with a sledgehammer and hardly changed the power at all. Is there power to be had? Absolutely. But, you know, like I had said before, a couple inches, it don't matter. It's not going to make a difference, you know. 1/4 of a horsepower? Really? And honestly, like I said before, these merge collectors help a lot, so they take a lot of work out of it. I like using them. They are expensive, but when you're, you know, trying to build a car like this, they're great. If I'm building a bracket car, I'll just put a weld-on header on it. I've got merge collectors on my Camaro. Love them. Like I said before, believe in stainless. I buy my stuff from Stainless Headers. I like their product. And I'll share this with you too, okay? Because I've bought J-Benz and other stuff from like Jegs and Summit, and I'm not bashing those guys, you know, but I've had guys that were economically minded and didn't, you know, I could buy, you know, cheap parts, Chinese stuff through them for $400, or I could spend $1,000 on this kit, and it's junk. When you start getting into the radiuses and stuff, like in here, they don't keep their shape. They'll be real oval shaped. And that happens with this tubing anyways. It's not perfectly round, so you usually got to hammer and dolly it a little bit to get it to line up right. But man, that stuff from them, the cheap stuff is cheap stuff. Don't use it. It's not worth it. Like I say, you know, the $1,100 worth of tubing here, I had to buy more J-Bends to do it, the 1 7/8" to make it all work right. You know, so I'm $1,200 in materials, less the collectors, and, you know, plus my labor. You know, it took me 4 days to build these things. So you think about that, that's a lot of investment, and you want it to last as long as it can. So stay away from stainless, stay away from junk materials. You know, you won't be sorry in the end. So anywho, do a little bit of a quick walk around here. You can see I got the windows in. These will be, I've got these are just like a socket headed screw, you can see right there, that I use to temporarily mount this. It's shimmed out with a rubber gasket to get it where the trim will snap on this thing, because they don't want the screws to show. So what I'll end up doing here is I'll end up countersinking these holes, and I'll put a like a black oxide headed screw in there, and it'll just be under the edge of the trim so that you can't see the screws. Originally I was going to try to do this and flush mount it, and then I was going to put a piece of 7/8 chrome vinyl on the edge to cover the screw up, but I didn't want to push my luck there. I know Sega's pretty serious about this kind of stuff, so I tried not to do that. And on this one I clearanced for the clips, but I really think I got to sand it back a little bit more in there to get the trim to snap in that groove. I've got the window tight, but I don't think that's going to work. So I'm going to have to, once I pull this out to paint the inside of the body, I'll have to sand that back. And I'll show you what I mean. I'll take you to look at the back window. I did the same thing on the back window, but I left more clearance there for the trim, which ended up working pretty good. These are 832 screws, and what I do is I drill like a number 29 hole, and then I'll drill the hole in the Lexan in the rubber out to 3/16, and I'll run a tap and put the screw in there. You can tap into these flanges because they're like double and triple layer, so it's a bit of a job. You got to be careful and try to not break taps. I broke one up front that I got to get out, which will be easy once I take the window out. So as you can see, that's where we're at. The only thing I've not done, I forgot, and I have to do that later today, is I've got a small ignition panel I got to make down in there to mount wiring products and stuff like that. So, but other than that, she rolls. Jerry and Karen are supposed to come after they get done down there at Britt Cummings' race, the Gasser race down there, and where are they going? Like Holly Springs? No, not Holly Springs. Gulfport, Mississippi. Sorry, they're going to Gulfport next. Once they get done, they're going to come give me the A-OK on this. Then I'll take it apart, powder coat it, paint the inside of the body, and get her assembled. When I get to that point, I'll put it all together and give you a final view. Thanks again for watching. As you can see, I'm not a lot going on in here. I'm trying to be careful. I cracked the front end on my Camaro. It's way back there in the back. I got it fixed and repaired, and then this afternoon I got to do some fiberglass chopping on this thing. So I'll share that after a bit. Thanks for watching.